Super.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Welcome viewers. I'm Lisa Crowley, publisher of BrocktonPost.com, and we have Dennis Eaniri, Ward 3 Councilor, running for re-election.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to my kitchen.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you in your kitchen.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So why don't you let folks know about yourself, Dennis? How long you've been a councilor for Ward 3, how long you've been in politics, married, kids?
Sure. A quick synopsis. I mean, I was born here in the city of Brockton back in August of 1954. Matter of fact, I was born in Ward 3. Spent a few years there until I was about 3 or 4 years old, I believe it was. Then I moved to the east side of Brockton and stayed there for almost 40 years. And then moved again as 8-9 years ago back to Ward 3, and at that point in time, that's when I became the council of Ward 3 back in 2003. But aside from that, I attended Brockton Public Schools, George S. Payne School, East Junior High School, graduated the class in 1972, even attended Massasoit College and took some business courses as well.
Cool.
I also served as a member of the Brockton School Committee representing the people of Ward 5 for 20 years, and there was only a little couple-year hiatus, but been involved in the political arena in the city since 1977. Worked for many other candidates as well throughout that time. But myself, 20 years in the school committee, and then I ran for city council in 2003, and I've been the city council from Ward 3 since January of 2004. So I'm in my eighth year, running for my 5th term for re-election.
Sure.
So it's been quite interesting for the many years that I've been involved, because I was also a part of the process when things went a little sour back in the early 80s when you had Proposition 2.5. And then we gained a little bit of consciousness, and we were able to bring some fundings. Funds came in, and then I was there for the Education Reform Act of what we call 1993, which gave you 7 more good years. And I mean good years. People don't realize that in that 7-year span, Brockton received well over $72 million.
It was a huge
came back into the city that went into your schools. I mean, it changed the whole school structure. But school committees lost fiscal autonomy as well back under 2.5. So your control went a little bit more to the mayor and to the city council of how the budget process was going to work and how you were going to get some of those funds.
So as a city councilor, what made you run for city council versus school committee after so many years?
Well, like I say, I moved from Ward 5 to relocate, and then I found a home in Ward 3. When I found the home in Ward 3, then city councilor Jerry Cassidy was not running for re-election. And everyone thought, oh, you're moving from Ward 5 to Ward 3 because the seat's open. And I had ran one time for council in Ward 5, and my good friend Councilor Brophy beat me back in 1989, and we kid each other about that then. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But in any case, once I was moving, people said, "You're moving for that? It's an open seat."
Sure.
No kidding aside, I said, "No, I'm moving because I'm moving to a single family home. My folks live with me. My father still is living with me now, and my mother passed a few years ago, so it was a little bit easy living for them." And then at some point, though, it was interesting living in the ward for the first 4 or 5 months that everyone came knocking on my door and said, "The seat, why aren't you running?" And I thought about it, and I had more people calling me that had lived in Ward 5 that were already in Ward 3 saying, "Welcome, but why aren't you running for our council, to be our council?" I said, "Well, I thought I'd take a little rest. It didn't work that way."
See what happens.
I went and I went and investigated with other people, and there were already a race. There was a race already, in this process really. And primary was just about maybe 8 weeks away, and there was about 5 people, already running. And then I came along. 2 others decided not to run. I said, "Well, I guess
go for it.
I'm going for it." And I worked very hard back then. And
who did you run against?
In the final, it came down to myself and Harry Owens. Harry Owens was very well known in the city and within Ward 3, but he was well known in the city as a Crime Watch founder, not only a coordinator but founder of Crime Watch back in the late 70s and early 80s. So he had a good little base himself. But I came along, and we both worked hard. And I was successful back then, and served since then as the council. So that's how it all happened. And enjoy being the councilor. You know what I mean? It's a job that never ends. Somebody can sit here and tell you, well, I could do it full time because I could be retired. You do it full time anyways, even if you have a full time job.
Well, that's one of the things Jerry Conifrey has said, that he would be more full time than you, that you haven't really been engaged, you unavailable.
It's so fun. And my response would be just the same response I gave him when we were interviewed on the radio, was the fact that for 8 years I've held ward meetings. He's only attended one, and that was the one I had 3 weeks ago.
Gotcha.
His excuse was, well, he was never invited. Ward meetings are advertised in the paper.
Yeah.
I buy the ads. I go on the radio. I announce at the council chambers. I go to parent groups and announce that I'm going to be having a ward meeting. What more? I'm not going to personalize.
BrocktonPost.com. I need your email.
Whatever we have to do, but I found that to be a very lame excuse.
So you didn't believe him.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been, if you really want to be involved with the people of Ward 3, then you should have been going to other ward meetings.
Sure.
Even after I became councilor, Harry Owens used to come and announce Crime Watch things at my ward meeting. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bygones, but he knew, hey, he's having ward meetings, I'm going to go.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? That, I think, is the thrust of how you meet and greet people, and how you're available back to the people. So I could bring a stack of notes this high,
right,
of phone calls, and how many times I get back to people. Just before I came here today, somebody called me with a problem on Emory Street, with a drainage problem. What, I got to call them back, and I got to find out what's going on and help those people.
Sure.
That's the job.
Right.
So if that's being not responsive, then I don't know what Mr. Connery's looking at.
Sure. No, I believe he had said during our interview that you're a used car salesman, or something to that effect.
And he was a retired teacher from a few years ago, and when I was on the school committee, he was a teacher at that point in time. And if I can remember correctly, I think we even cut him a few times and brought him back. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I mean, so much can be said for what I do. I mean, I've done a host of, not host of.
And he said it in a nice way. He said, you guys are friends, and things may be getting a little testy.
Yeah.
But not really.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know who I am, and I know what I've done, and I think the people of Ward 3 know that. If the people of Ward 3 feel that it's time for a change, then I can't tell them that they're, that they have to make up their own. They have to make up their own mind. But I don't think that. I don't think that with people I've spoken to, and I've had more people just in the last few weeks come up to me, and they've watched some of our interviews and say, how could that man say, you're not responsive when he's never been to any of your meetings? And people are listening to that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Attend one meeting and again, say I don't invite you, or I can't send out an honorable invitation. You know what I mean?
Impossible.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible.
Registered mail.
It's impossible to do. But,
sure.
In any case, I think that's been one of my hallmarks of my success, has been by getting back to my constituents and answering their concerns. Now, does something fall through the crack? Of course it does. Of course it does. We find that even in everyday life of something else we do. You know what I mean? Or you call somebody or a business or something, and you wait to hear from them back. And then you get busy and you say, gee, they never called me back.
Right.
And I never called them back.
Yeah.
I mean,
it happens all the time.
It happened. I mean, you do find that.
No, in all these years as city councilor, what do you consider your main accomplishment? Is it on the citywide level, at the local level, in your ward level?
Well, I think first off, some of my accomplishments naturally go back to my years as school committee, and I would think that during those years of serving on the school committee, I don't think I ever thought in my wildest dreams that we would build new schools. And I was part of the voluntary desegregation plan back in the mid-90s, which brought you back a 90% reimbursement to 3 buildings. The Joseph Plouffe, Louis Angelo, and the Dr. Bill Arnone School. Those were 3 schools that we built under that voluntary desegregation plan. And we worked hard to do that. And there was a little split with that school committee to even wanting to do that. It was under, at that point, Mayor Fowler was mayor.
Yes, I remember hearing some of that. I wasn't around then, but
Mayor Fowler was mayor
then,
and we had to balance our schools.
Sure.
When Matthew George Jr., a very good friend of mine, superintendent for 11 years, when he left as superintendent, he actually said, the one thing you people have to do, you've got to balance your schools. We're unbalanced, you've got to balance them. And he left, and the new superintendent, which was then Bob Jones for a short span, we went hard and fought to get that voluntary desegregation plan together, because we could use 3 new schools.
Right. Oh yeah.
Aside from the fact that under the 3 new schools, yes, 3 more were going to come. Mary Baker, Matthew George School, and we're in hopes at that point you were going to have a middle school attached to the Mary Baker School. That didn't happen, but I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself, and to have worked with education to have brought it to its forefront.
How about specific city council these last
City council, I think during the last 8 years, as I've served as the city council from Ward 3, again, I think one of my accomplishments was to be able to bring people together and hold ward meetings. Bring department heads into the ward and talk about different things that are going on. Many different people have had as guests, the chief of police, whether it be the crime watch coordinator, whether it even be, the mayors come, certain mayors have come, to talk about different issues.
Sure.
Other than even the neighborhood crime watch group, people themselves, being at the meetings and we talk about those types of issues. I think I've tried to, as much as I know my opposition says I haven't, but I've tried to take private streets and make them public ways, try to secure funds so that we can at some point have those streets repaved. It doesn't happen overnight, and there's a process to that. He does not understand the process. And unfortunately, our taxpayer doesn't understand it as well. They all think tax dollar takes care of the repaving of streets, but in essence, in your budget, there's no line item that says repaving of streets. Your tax dollar takes care of some of your other services. Your tax,
there's a priority list for Chapter 90 monies.
Chapter 90 money,
assuming highway.
Exactly. Chapter 90 money comes into the city. Years ago, you had up to $3.5 million. This year, we were lucky we got, I think, just a shade over $2 million. A couple of years ago, we were lucky we were only getting 1.3 to 1.4 million. But keep in mind, you have 7 wards. 7 ward councilors are making requests, not so much my request, but if you came to me and said, Jake, what's my chances of getting my street repaved? Well, you look at it and say, let me submit it. That's how the list gets created. But then when that list has been created, sent to the mayor and DPW commissioner, those two make the decision on what street.
Right.
I've heard a lot about a street or two in the ward that didn't because 2 others did, because of a development I selected to have those streets reworked. Well, in essence, I didn't select the 2 streets that got done. Maybe one should have been done before the other 2 but then again, there's a length to those streets.
That's the intersection of Manly,
no, I don't know where he's mentioning Manly and West Chestnut Street, that work was done for the Bernardi Auto Group, and I don't know where he comes from with that because that intersection was done previous to me becoming a councilor. So I don't know what he's talking about on that one.
Okay.
Bernardi Auto Group, all they did was develop the land.
Right.
The intersection was there.
He's trying to figure out the $6 million on that, whether, first they're saying 22 million for the project and then it's 16. And he's talking about the TIF.
Well, there's a $22 million. It was a $22 million project. Did they receive a TIF? Yes, they did because they were in a TIF zone. TIFs are really running. They're running out at this point. They only have like a 9-year TIF. Some of those people up there, like Copeland Toyota, Paul Clark, Volkswagen, a few other people, businesses, their TIFs went 15 or 20 years because that's when the TIFs were created under units administration to bring business in.
Right.
Are they paying taxes on the assessed value? Yes, they will be. Probably be somewhere maybe $250,000 in the course of maybe the next 3 years. But then after that, it goes up a certain percentage to another percentage.
Increments. That's why they call it tax increment.
That's why you call it tax
increment financing.
Financing. That's exactly right. So yes, they still. But I mean, at this point in time, wouldn't you rather have a business paying you $250,000 than a piece of property just sitting there paying you nothing? I don't know. That makes common sense to me.
Sure.
I mean, that's what we tried to do.
He's trying to say that we're not, that it wasn't completely explained that we weren't going to get the assessment right away. It didn't come out as clearly or publicly as I guess he thought it should have.
Yeah, but it did. See, if he was following it, and he was following it back last year at this time, even sooner. No, it was back last year at this time. Yeah, sooner I should say. Because it's almost 2 years now since we really started, because there'll be a year in April, to be truthful with you. So it was the year prior to that.
After they started construction.
Yeah, I mean, if he was paying attention to that and everything moving forward, and all that process was explained, that June of 2010, it was all explained when they were taking the when they purchased the property and what the city was going to bring them, and going through the process. So it was all explained. So
gotcha.
I can't speak for that. Sure. I just know that nobody's getting nothing for nothing.
Right.
And like I say, $22 million project, and that's their price tag, $22 million project. Yes, they got $16 million. They borrowed $16 million under an economic stimulus plan that came from Washington to the state through the governor's office. That's how Mr. Jim Carney. He borrowed money. How he's paying that back, that's his business.
Right.
That's not the city of Brockton's business.
Hopefully they're selling cars.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully. But I mean, that's that's how that works. You know,
Right.
that's not our business or how we purchased or how we settled up to get the money. All we know is he bought a piece of property that, believe it or not, he bought it for like 6.7 million, and in a year prior to that, that property was out there for 12 point something. The banks were telling the people that own the property, you better do something, or what else would they do? They would have just taken it.
Right,
You know, they would have just taken the whole property, and you would have never known. It could have still be sitting there desolate.
exactly,
You know, so-
exactly. I think most people think it's a good project for the city and, you know,
And,
wait and
and
see.
you know, everybody worked on it. I get, he crucifies me every once in a while by saying that, you know, oh, you know, he wasn't the only one, the mayor, you know, the assessor's office and Mr. Conner. Well, I include that when I say the mayor, city councils, and her staff. That's her staff.
Right,
They're all in on it. The initial first meeting was Mayor Belzotti, Councilor eaniri, the two people from the Bernardi Auto Group, and Mary Waldron from the 21st Century Corp. And her chief of staff.
Mm.
That's who made the initial, that was the initial meeting group. And,
Okay.
and we heard the whole, you know,
Yep.
and we were like, let's do what we gotta do. And as a ward councilor, the mayor said to me, Councilor, you know what you have to do to get your colleagues on board, you know, to make sure that we can make the TIF work for them. And there was negotiations back and forth on
oh,
that.
sure, and those are public meetings as
That
well,
was
if I
the TIF
remember
TIF
right.
meetings, and there was negotiation back and forth. At one point, there was a stoppage because two sides weren't agreeing on where they thought they'd be, to what we thought we were looking at and to what they were looking at. So there was a little stoppage at one point.
Sure.
We couldn't give it away either.
Right, right.
Couldn't give it
Well,
away.
speaking of that, let's switch subjects real
Go ahead.
quick. You had said that, you know, you've invited department heads to your ward meetings.
Yes.
There's been a lot of, you know, hullabaloo, rightly so, over the water bills.
Yes.
And obviously, I think Jerry has said now he's got an estimated versus an actual, but what do you think, you know, do you think the city council or maybe the mayor should have come stronger on this? Do we need to fire Thorson? Is it his fault?
Oh, I don't know if I don't know if we want to put a blame to a finger to somebody's fault. I will say this. I truly believe that if we were putting bills out, if you were receiving or I was receiving my bill, all of a sudden, you know, it went from $640 one quarter, and then next quarter I went up to, you know, $1,280, and then the next quarter I went up to like $3,800. Would you say that there's a problem? I mean, when the bill was going out, I think
Sure.
that's where the problem lies. Why do we even let some of those bills go out to the higher increment that they were going out?
Right.
Somebody should have been catching that. I mean, obviously, that would send a signal to me. I know it would to you, anybody. I mean,
As a
what's good?
homeowner, yeah, I'm
I mean,
checking
but
the bill.
even in a working, you know, within the office itself, I mean, somebody should have said, wait a minute, there's a problem here.
Right,
You know, instead we just kept,
going.
they just kept going out, they kept going out, they kept going out, and I think you'll find the problem was even been going on for some time, even probably before I was even a counselor, to be truthful
Well,
with
that's
you, but
kind
it
of
just,
what
it-
people are saying.
it just kept, it
It's
just
been
kept
going on and
escalating,
on.
escalating. So if that be the case, then how do you just blame, you know, Mike Thorson, because Mike Thorson wasn't there then either, you know what I mean? And some of the other people weren't there as well. So I don't want to put a finger to something.
Sure.
My way is, if I was a sitting mayor, I would want to correct it. I'd want to know how and what happened. Why weren't we rectifying it before? I think every council was trying to look at that. That's why we requested an audit, you know what I mean? But I think what we have to do now is still correct it. I think there's still that issue.
Yeah,
I
it seems
will-
like the solution has once again hurt.
Right, well, this is my own opinion.
The 2-year look back.
The 2-year look back period, I think, is reasonable, because they wanted to go more 4 or 5. We went 2 years. But you want to know something, Lisa? I think, I'm not trying to be rude at all, but I think you'll find that some of those people that have received a high bill, all they're looking for is, give me the new meter, roll me back to 0, and tell me I owe you nothing. Can that happen?
You know,
That's the
maybe.
mayor's going to have to make that decision.
Right.
You know?
Maybe in some cases we're just going to have to end up at the appellate tax board.
I mean, that's what I see. I
But
think
I
that's what
think-
those people they want, and I can understand, you know, their situation.
Sure.
But I mean,
Bob Ford has been the poster child for this, you
Yes.
know, pretty much from the beginning, and even the audit said that he might be owed money. And then we find out, you know, that he gets basically a contract saying, okay, you know, we'll write all of this off, we'll give you the 2-year look back,
right,
but it neglects to tell him that he still owes $4,000.
right, right, yeah.
These kinds of things keep happening. And his story is, I think, to me, has always been the most compelling one.
Yeah.
Because he's been fighting from the beginning, like 9 years ago.
Right.
With these water problems.
He obviously, he has.
You know, and
been,
he's been vigilant about it,
right,
you know.
he stayed
and
right
whether,
up on top of it, yeah.
so I wondered, you know, what's going on here? Why can't we just, you know,
why we can't
take,
just,
or be... Just,
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, what we really should be doing is just concentrating on those are the people that should be concentrated on first. And then take it from that point to the others that came in. And I will have to say, you know, as Councilor of Ward 3, I only received a handful of calls. Mr. Connery never called me, and he was going with an estimate for 2 years.
Sure.
You
Well,
know,
he says
so,
he just found out.
Well,
And in his
how do you-
last bill, it
how do you-
became, he said it was actual,
Yeah,
and then it became estimated.
estimated. So, I mean, and then he already had a new meter put in. So someone's already asked me, well, how come he got a new meter before other people got new meters? Well, I don't know.
Did they start in your ward?
Yeah, I don't
forget.
think
Was it this
they
first?
started in my ward. I don't think they started that way.
I'm
But
trying to remember.
and yeah, I don't think so. They
Figure
told me
that one
because
out.
I had USI Services talking about gas. They were the ones that had at the last ward meeting to explain to us how that whole process was going to work. And I think they told my people it would be more February, March. So
Okay.
obviously they went up and replaced his meter like they did other meters when they had problems.
Yep.
Went up and replaced it. But in any case,
Maybe he had a problem.
you know, I mean, it's just.
We'll double check on
I think
it.
we should concentrate on those other people that had, you know, the $10,000-$20,000 bills and try to get them resolved before we keep moving forward. But that's something that the mayor has to, you know, to work on.
Right.
You know, I mean, she's going to work on it.
Did you not take a strong stand on that because you didn't get a lot of calls on that? You know, obviously Michelle Dubois has been out front with that.
Well, I think you'll find the entire council took a stand on it, but I mean, it was to the fact that, you know, I wasn't getting calls. A lot of councils didn't get calls, and the calls you did get were from people from, you know, this end of the city would be Ward 6, some parts of Ward 7. You know, but I wasn't getting calls. I had maybe a couple other calls in Ward 3 from a couple of tenement homes, and a couple of the calls where people had a problem, and they asked me, what do I do, how do I correct it, and I sent them where to go, and they got corrected. So
Gotcha.
those are the calls I got.
Sure.
You know,
Okay.
at my point, I figured, you know, it seemed to be okay coming from within my neighborhood, you know, and I had other people call and say, gee, what should I be looking for?
Right.
You know, I told them what they should be looking for, and did your bill change by any astronomical amount of money? And they were like, no. I said, well, you just
Keep
pay
your
attention to it.
yeah.
Just pay attention to it, you know, and if it does, let me know, and then we can move forward at that point. But, I mean, you'll find that from majority of the councils that, you know, they weren't getting, right.
It was,
The way, yeah, it would seem like it was in an area type, for whatever reason, in I don't know the answer to that reason.
Right, we're
You
still
know,
trying to figure that
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
We may never know.
You know, we may never know, and I don't think the audit really gave you the true answer to why it just happened in one particular section.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
so
no, I don't think so either.
No.
We'll have to wait and see
Yeah. we'll have to.
what comes up next, unfortunately.
We'll have to.
Aquaria Water, we'll stick with water, the contract. You know, obviously we're in election season, but Ron Matta has come out along with Kate Archett as well, running for councilor at large, that
Correct.
maybe this Aquaria contract needs to be looked at a little more.
Well, you know, I'm not going to disagree with that because when I went on the council in 2004, I went on and Councilor Brophy returned. And we both had some questions, and I took a stand with Councilor Brophy when he started asking questions about that whole procedure. And I looked at it as a new councilor, you know, coming into how come we're going to be spending X amount of dollars every year. But I guess first of all, I guess the question would be, why would you as a city councilor back at that city council level give up your authority for 20 years to never have a say about that $5 million? That I find, you're the watchdog. To city hall.
Right.
You know, you appropriate money, but yet, you know, I think the approval should have come back to the city council to, hey, why are we going to be paying $5 million this year when we didn't sell? Why are we going to pay 5.6? Why are we going to pay 4? You know what I mean? You should have been able to ask a question every year before that bill was paid. They can't. That's how that contract was written.
Or some people are saying that's how the contract's written.
That's I know because Council Brophy, being an attorney and you know being worked in the State House, I mean that's how he dove into that and I you know looked at it as well with him, but that was my biggest concern, you know, and the fact that we've
been through two mayors, Harrington and Belzati with this contract in,
right, but Units,
in Units too.
But Units was the co-founder of the real hand script of how it was going to be handled. You know what I mean?
So who on this current council was there in '02?
Councilor Petty and Councilor DiNapoli.
And those
the only two left.
Only two left.
Yeah, they're the only two left that were there at that point in time. everyone else is moved on.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So,
everyone
I
else is
mean,
moved on.
it's almost a stupid question. I mean,
Right.
how do we look at it? What can you do as a city councilor
I
to
think
maybe,
you need to look at that contract, and I think
'cause legal is saying, you know,
I don't know,
we're having outside
I don't know,
lawyers
I've always
say,
talked to other people that have said to me, contracts can be made to be broken at some point. So I know they say, no, it's binding and you cannot. I know I have a couple of trainings on the council that say that. That may be from the legal point, but I still, I know I listened to Kate Archer when she was asked the question at one of the debates, and I sort of agreed that I think you could take a look and pull apart where you have to pull apart. Whether it's renegotiate, I think you can. I think you can. I mean, that's the way I always look at it. Yeah, it might take some depth of negotiation, but I think it can be done, and I think that's something. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, and I'm not afraid to look at it. You know, if reelected, why wouldn't I?
sure.
I wouldn't. I'd like to use $5 million or at least $4 million of that money and elsewhere, because I think the next couple of years are going to be worse than what we've even had. And anybody knew that was to be in office. That's probably why you don't have people running right now, because of that fact. You're going to have to make some tough decisions. And,
Without a doubt.
And I've made them now. You're going to get into more bodies and true services again, and that's what's going to hurt.
What would you like to do with that 3 to 4 to 5 million that we're talking about?
Oh, I would definitely want to put more police patrol,
Everybody's saying
police in the
more
house.
police.
Yeah, because if you follow,
Which is good.
if you followed me just about a month or so ago, I had concerns about the $60,000 that was appropriated for police.
You wanted
protection.
in your ward too.
I wanted some in my ward, not only just in my ward, but if we're going to spend $60,000 on the Main Street issues, and I understand there's issues there. There are issues, daytime issues, a little bit different than what I may have at nighttime in Campello. And a couple of things I have a problem with in Campello, I think will wash themselves out. That's why we have new people on the License Commission. I'll leave that alone, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that'll wash itself, but still, why can't I get some of that? You know what I mean? I lost weed and seed money.
Right.
Weed and seed money that used to come from District Attorney Cruz's office. For many years we had that, and it was
That was like 78,000.
more than that. It was almost it was way up, almost about I think it was about 680,000 to the final, and we lost it because of their cutback, and we lost it like abruptly. One year they took a piece of it, and then they just said it's over.
No more.
And then when they did bring some money in, they brought it in and gave it. Through the Brockton Interfaith Community to use to work in some neighborhoods. But they went in different directions into some of my neighborhoods that do not have a problem. Well, let's knock on the door and see what their problems are. Well, of course they're going to tell you they want a new sidewalk, a new street, a new street light. Those are the things they're going to tell you because they don't have the other problems. You know what I mean? That we were having in those other areas.
Now you're talking drugs, gang activity.
Exactly. When you go to the Tremont Street area, the Denton Street area, the Essex Street area, all those areas behind and around Cape Cod, Cafe, those areas there, you know what I mean? Sometimes you have some problems there. You need the extra protection. I don't have it up on Clifton Ave, Copeland Street, Southworth, Carlton. I don't have those types of problems. If it is, then it's an isolated situation that you're not hearing about. You know what I'm saying? But,
sure.
And that discouraged me to the fact that we were going a different route. But I mean, I was not against the $60,000 for what they were trying to do, because it's extra patrol, and you know as well as I do, once the cold really hits in January, February, you're not going to find too many officers say, hey, I'll take that extra beat.
Right.
And that money's not going to last forever either. But I knew there was a problem, but I just think that spread the wealth a little bit.
Yeah.
And the mayor and I had conversation on that. And,
sure.
Business people just met with the mayor a couple weeks ago in regards to it.
Right.
They wanted me to go, and I said, no, you people go.
Well, the problem is we need more money for more officers to, get the boots on the ground. I think a lot of people would say that, Brockton's reputation relies on it.
Right, I would want to put more into our police department. We've never had, I think, and I may be off by a few, but I think the total amount of people you need to absolutely run the police department within this city is somewhere like 220. We've never been there. We've gotten up to like 186, 189, then we fall back to 164, we come back up, we go back down. I mean, we did put, 8 or 9 new officers on and coming on this fiscal year. Where do they lie come June, though, when we know the true budget again? Yeah, and I'd like to see wherever there's vacancies in the fire department. I think they should be manned as well.
I mean, everybody,
Public safety.
Where do you get the money?
Public safety. That's where I'd want to see that money, and definitely, if there's anything left, you want to keep your educational process going and teachers in the classroom.
Sure.
Naturally, you know what I mean. You
oh,
want
absolutely.
To do that, Quality of education is very important.
It's the only thing that brings people to the city
That's
at this
the
point is education.
Lifeline. It's the lifeline of what we got going in the city, and we got a great educational system.
Absolutely.
So.
Speaking of possible pools of money out there, the power plant.
Yes.
Against or for?
Against.
Against. Wholeheartedly?
Wholeheartedly against. I have been. I registered myself against that when I was city council president in 2007, when it was at its forefront of, you know, again, it's always been in the forefront every election year.
Sure.
But I was council president then, and naturally my people came to me again, an issue that we discussed at my ward meeting several times over, and I had a lot of people that came and voiced their opinion that, you know, definitely do not want a power plant in my backyard. And you've got to understand that Ward 4 and Ward 3 neighbor one another. Every ward neighbors one another.
Sure. But they're closest.
They're closest. They're closest, and I don't care if you're there in my area in Westchester or Longwood or you know, Wyoming Ave or whatever. Difference from even Ward 3 goes all the way up to Pearl Street. Still, and I'm sure if you talk to some of those people up there, they would probably say, well, it doesn't bother me because we're way up here. Well, it does. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect you.
Is it the environmental effects?
The environmental effects, and I just think for the health and well-being of the people of the city that I just don't, you know, I just don't want to see it there. I'm
Not
going
at
to
this
know
point
with
in
it.
time?
And just,
Ever a power plant in Brockton, or is this, you know?
hey, there might be a power plant in Brockton, but I could be in Pine Hill Cemetery by then. So I don't know. You know, that could be 40, 50 years from now, and the fight may be in somebody else's hand. You know what I mean? But
Right.
as long as I'm involved, and you know, I look to be still, God willing. I mean, I don't, you know, foresee me being in any way any different than no on that.
Gotcha. Okay. A couple of quick personal questions.
Sure.
Married with kids?
No, I've been a lifelong bachelor.
Bachelor,
yeah,
all right.
been a lifelong bachelor, and unfortunately, no kids.
Living the gentleman's
you know,
life.
Yeah, I'm getting a little older, so I don't know if it's the gentleman's life anymore. But in any case, no. I mean, family orientated. I have an older sister, and she had 3 children, and you know, 2 nephews and a niece, and
sure.
and my niece just gave birth to her 4th one about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So I got 4 great ones. You know,
Wow.
2 great nephews and 2 great nieces, and you know, so that's the family
Yep.
part of it. And
Sure.
like I say, my father's 85 and been a lot of the weather this summer, but he lives with me, so
Sure.
you know, we all pitch in. And what else can I say? That's
No,
the
that's
family.
great.
That's the family life.
Yep,
You know?
yep.
What can I do?
No, that's good. We,
Yeah.
we don't have kids either. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
and it's like,
You
it's
know?
okay.
I asked the
It's
question. Okay, when I'm old and gray, who's going to take care of me? I guess me. Who knows?
Yeah.
You never know.
I
You never
figure
know.
I'm not going to go that far.
No,
I'm
that's
not
right.
waiting around until I'm
No.
old and gray. We'll see
That's
what
good.
happens.
Whatever happens, happens. You
It's
know.
better to burn out than fade away.
Go with
as
it.
Neil
That's
Young
right.
would say.
That's right. That's
No,
right.
we're working on it. It's just whether it's going to
Super.
happen or not.
Great.
You know, and if it does, it does. It
Plenty
doesn't,
of
it
time.
doesn't.